Hello, everyone, and welcome to Henry Schein's series on COVID-19 on YouTube. I'm Dr. Gary Severance with Henry Schein, which, incidentally, is celebrating their 90th anniversary this week. Congratulations to everyone at Henry Schein. But for this series, I want to welcome back Dr. David Reznik to provide us the latest information on the pandemic. Dr. Reznik, welcome.
Thank you, Gary, and congratulations to Henry Schein for their 90th year in business. It's quite an accomplishment. I'm glad to have been a part of the educational component these last 2.5 years talking about COVID and dentistry. As you know, I really like to bring good news. That's what I like to focus on. And we have some good news to talk about, and we'll talk a little bit about the boosters, the new boosters that you have heard about. And we'll talk a little bit more about maybe getting the flu shot and the booster, when that should happen. Who are these boosters intended for? How long will the booster last? All those different kinds of questions. Even things like, should you get the booster and the flu shot at the same time? So I think these are issues that you might be hearing on the nightly news or reading in your newspapers or seeing online. So let's see if we can get some studies that are out there and some information that are out there that will help you make your decisions on staying up to date. So saying that, looking at the U.S. COVID-19 cases and deaths and other metrics by state, you can see that the number of new cases has fallen 30% this week, which is absolutely wonderful. New daily reported deaths fell by 32%. Again, wonderful news. Hospitalizations rose just a little bit, but not enough to put a strain on our health systems. However, there's so much going on with allergy season coming and other issues. My hospital still remains at over 100% occupancy. So we really need to keep it like this, keep the hospitalizations down, keep the cases down. I know we've all hopefully had a wonderful summer and continue to until we hit fall, but fall is in the air. If you look at the new reported cases per day, one thing, there have been over 95 million cases have been reported since February 29th, 2020. We started this series on March 23rd, 2020, and what an honor it's been to be able to share some of this information for this long a period of time. The average number of cases, so if you look at the graph, if you look at the far right, on September 8th, there were 85,331 new cases reported. The average 7 days, so over a period of 7 days, it's about 68,000 new cases being reported. That is an underreport because you can test at home, and those tests that you do at home actually don't get reported to the database. So the numbers are a little bit higher, but where we are is very good, and we hope it stays this way. The new deaths reported per day, we had on September 10th, there were 358 deaths reported related to COVID-19. And sadly, we have lost over 1 million people to this disease since February 29th, 2020. And I mentioned before, I've worked in HIV for well over 30 years, and our number of deaths are not even close to that. So this has been a truly impactful time. It's impacted our lives, our work, our private lives. But now we've been in a wonderful place where I can go to dinner with people. We can go out and do normal things, go to a football game, baseball, whatever your sport of choice is, or movies, whatever you enjoy. It really has been a break. And I think we as a people actually need this break, and we need to keep it this way so we all can stay safe and enjoy each other's company. Hospitalizations in the United States are basically flat. If you look at the light purple, you can see the bumps when we've had new waves that have come in. Right now we have about 4,000, a little bit over 4,000 filled ICU beds. So again, now it really isn't taking up a lot of our ICU, and that's when you look at the community transmission levels. And right now it's just doing really well. The number of people in hospitals is key to understanding the outbreak's effect on our community. For instance, my hospital. If hospitals or intensive care units are full, people seeking treatment, whether for COVID or something else, may have care delayed or even denied. Now, if you come in as an emergency to a hospital, they have to address that emergency, so please be aware of that. That's EMTALA. A rise in hospitalizations tend to follow a rise in new cases by a couple of weeks. Right now, those new cases have been going down, so good job, everyone. However, unvaccinated people are over 10 times more likely to be hospitalized during Omicron. And we know that Omicron is more contagious, but it is not more virulent. It does not cause a more serious disease. But still, unvaccinated people are over 10 times more likely to be hospitalized compared to those who are up to date with their vaccines. So this study, which actually comes from COVID-Net, monthly hospitalization rates from January 21st through April 22nd were 3.5 to over 17.7 times higher in unvaccinated people versus those who were vaccinated, irrespective of booster dose status. And so this is part of the study that's going on. So if you look at who is hospitalized, mostly the patients that we're seeing in hospital are unvaccinated, but there has been an increase in those who have been vaccinated. And what does that basically mean? It means that the efficacy of the vaccines over a period of time wane. And I think we're all aware of that. That's why some of us got boosted. Some of us have been boosted twice based on risk factors or our work environment. Compared to individuals who were both vaccinated and received a booster during this January to April Omicron wave, hospitalizations were 10 times higher for those who were unvaccinated, as I stated, and 2.5 times higher for those who were fully vaccinated but had not received a booster. So there still is problems. Vaccinated hospitalized patients were older than those who were unvaccinated. 70 was the median age versus 58. More likely to have 3 or more comorbidities, diabetes, obesity, heart disease, COPD, etc. 78% versus about 52%, and had a higher likelihood of being immunosuppressed. So 23% to 10%, which was highly significant in their study. When looking at vaccinated hospitalizations per month, there was a steep upward trend month over month, with an increase from 2 cases documented from January 21 to 2,239 cases in April of 22, with 75% of the cases being 65 and older. So when you're looking at vaccinated hospital cases, when the last booster came out, there was a small amount that were documented in January of 21, but those numbers began to creep up, and that's because the vaccines were waning. The increase in hospitalization despite vaccination and boosters was also noted in a recent CDC data showed that a hospitalization rate of 44% in patients ages 65 and older during Omicron BA2 wave, which was from March to May, despite high vaccination rates. So there are breakthroughs. We don't have a sterilizing vaccine. So what our vaccines are doing at this point is protecting us from serious illness and protecting us from hospitalization. The goal is to have a vaccine that will be sterilizing, that will prevent you from getting infected. And there is some progress in that area. We have a little catch up to do, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Still, the report noted that hospitalization rates among unvaccinated adults were approximately triple those of vaccinated adults. So I know that most of you who are listening to this webinar and most of your staff in families have been vaccinated and boosted. And so what does this mean for your family as far as this waning booster? When should you get booster? What is it about these bivalent boosters that might be a benefit? And you get this information not just for you and to share, but to share with your patients, because we want our patients, as I said, and our staff to remain as healthy as possible so we can continue providing our much needed and sometimes not accessed dental care. The high proportion of hospitalized patients who were vaccinated suggested not only a need for all people to stay up to date with vaccinations, including additional boosters for those who are eligible, but also for increased use of early outpatient antiviral treatment for patients with severe risk, regardless of vaccination status. And there is pre-exposure prophylaxis that we use in some of our patients here. I do follow an immunocompromised patient population, so we do have EvuShield, and that may result because you don't get an adequate immune response from COVID-19 vaccination. So this was published in the journal JAMA. So for the study, they looked at 250 hospitals in population-based COVID-net, including 192,000 laboratory-confirmed COVID-19 associated hospitals cases. Of these cases, 76% had vaccination data available, 69% were unvaccinated, keeping with the theme, 24.5% received primary vaccination, and 22% had also received one of the two boosters. Among 11,000 patients whose reason for hospitalization was likely associated to COVID-19, the median age was 61. 48% were women, 51% are white, 25% are Black or African American, which is much higher than the percentage of the population, which means we really need to get our vaccines to those who are most vulnerable. And 12.6% were Hispanic, again, about the size of the population in the United States, but still more work needs to be done. So if your patient population includes African Americans or Black Americans and Hispanic Americans, please talk to them about the benefits of getting vaccinated to prevent hospitalization and illness. The limitation in the studies noted that although COVID-19 is huge, it only covers about 10% of the U.S. population, and you can't generalize to the entire country, but you have a good idea about what is happening, where we are with this disease at this point. So just a little bit of review and types of the vaccines that are available. There are 4 approved authorized vaccines in the United States used to prevent, and I'm going to prevent, serious illness and hospitalization due to COVID-19. We all know about the mRNA vaccines. That was what we started with and prevented a lot of deaths and hospitalizations. The Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna vaccines, they are the mRNA vaccines. You can also get the Novavax COVID-19 protein subunit vaccine, which has recently been approved. It is not an mRNA vaccine. It's more based on like a flu shot that you would get. So it is, it's approved for the initial 2 vaccines. If you have patients who are afraid of mRNA for whatever reason, they think it's too new, or it's going to do some of the things that are out there in the web world about how it impacts DNA and things that it actually doesn't do, then there is an option to get the primary series out that, and that is the COVID-19 vaccine, the Novavax COVID-19 vaccine. There still is a J&J Janssen vaccine out there. I do believe they have stopped producing this vaccine, at least in the United States. It's COVID-19 viral vector vaccine. We did have some significant side effects with that vaccine, and less protection, which is why it's really not being produced at this time. These vaccines are given as a shot in the muscle of the upper arm or thigh. I have given some injections. I usually aim for the upper arm. None of them affect or interact with our DNA. That's one of those mystery things, fake news that is out there. COVID-19 vaccine ingredients are considered safe for most people. There are exceptions, but for most people, these are safe. And so I thought I would go and do this for you and list that nearly all of the ingredients in our COVID-19 vaccines are ingredients that are found in many foods, fats, sugar, and salts. They all have, or don't have, there are no preservatives like thimerosal or mercury or any other preservatives in our mRNA vaccines or in Novavax vaccine. There are no antibiotics or any other antibiotics in these vaccines. There are no medicines or therapeutics like ivermectin or any other medications included in these vaccines. no tissue like aborted beetle cells, which was out there for quite some time, gelatin, or any materials from any animal in these vaccines. No food proteins like eggs or eggs products, which many people have allergy to when they're getting the flu vaccine, gluten, peanuts, tree nuts, nut products, or any nut byproducts, and COVID-19 vaccines are not manufactured in facilities that produce food products, so you don't worry about cross-contamination. There are no metals like iron, nickel, cobalt, titanium, rare earth alloys, or any manufactured products like microelectronics, so we're not going to be tracking you, electrodes, carbon, nanotubes, or any other nanostructures or nanowire semiconductors. There even is no latex for people who have latex allergies. The viral stoppers used to hold the vaccines do not contain latex. So I want to leave the slide up just for a minute because this is how you debunk some of the news that's out there that is not true. This is not a political issue. This is a health issue. And really, I'm getting close to that 65 number. My aunt and uncle, who I just saw, they came in for my nephew's wedding, and one is over 90, one is getting close to 90, have to make sure that they're up to date with their vaccines. I want the matriarch of my family to live as long as possible. So I think it's really important that we are able to talk to our patients, give them this kind of information, and even maybe have a handout that says some of this because it does debunk a lot of people's fears. What does being up to date with COVID-19 vaccines actually mean? Well, the new vaccines that we have are called bivalent boosters, which target the Omicron subvariants causing most U.S. cases. And so with the arrival of these new boosters, they've been out for about a week. The CDC says being up to date with COVID-19 vaccination means completing a primary series for those who have not, and receiving the most recent booster dose it recommends for you. And we will go over what is recommended for you. On September 1, the CDC recommended updated COVID-19 boosters from Pfizer-BioNTech for people 12 and older, and from Moderna for people 18 and older. Those are the only boosters that are available for people who are over age 12. The other booster that we had before is no longer available for people aged 12 and older or 18 and older. The CDC expects to recommend updated COVID-19 boosters for other pediatric groups in the coming weeks. So we're really talking about adults at this point, not children. The updated boosters, as I mentioned, are bivalent vaccines, meaning they target both the most recent Omicron subvariants known as BA4 and BA5, and we're actually beginning to see a little bit of a drop in BA5, as well as the original SARS-CoV-2 strain. Vaccine boosters help restore protection that has waned since the previous vaccination, and in this case, they provide broader protection. But the key is these vaccines do wane, and I want you to keep a little bit of focus on that as we go through today's presentation. The BA4 and 5 subvariants are currently causing most cases of COVID-19 in the U.S., and they're predicted to be circulating this fall and winter. So we're getting ready to go back inside sometime soon. It's going to be cold, and so we really should be up to date. And this is coming from the American Dental Association. Being up to date with the vaccine means getting the latest booster, so people who are eligible to receive an updated booster 2 months after their last vaccination, whether it was a primary or booster dose. There needs to be that 2-month waiting period. So if you're just getting vaccinated with the original 2 shots, at this point you would need to wait 2 months later than that to get booster. The only booster, as I mentioned, that is currently authorized for people 12 and older is the brand new bivalent booster. They can no longer receive the monovalent vaccine that only targeted the original SARS-CoV-2 strain. So even if something breaks off of the original strain and is something new, we will have some protection. If there's something that breaks off from BA4 and 5, we will have some protection. That's why it's called bivalent, so we get double protection, and we're not just going against the original strain that caused so much severe illness and disruption in our lives for at least 2 years. So let's go what the CDC recommends at this point. including all primary series doses and boosters for the age group. So for people aged 6 months and 4 years, and of course I leave this up to the parents to make up their mind, this is a CDC recommendation they should get the primary series doses. People ages 5 and older should get the primary series doses, and the booster dose recommend them for the CDC if eligible. So people ages 5 to 11 are currently recommended to get the original booster. That may change. People ages 12 and older, as I stated before, are recommended to receive updated Pfizer or Moderna bivalent boosters. This includes people who have received all primary series doses and people who have previously received one or more of the original boosters. My vaccine card, which is getting old, I have 2 vaccines at this point. So I've been boosted twice at this point. At this time, people aged 12 to 17 can only receive the updated Pfizer bivalent booster, meaning that Moderna will cover you if you're 18 or older. If you're 12 and older, it would need to be the Pfizer. So this is, again, information. If you go to the pharmacist, they should know this, but if not, come prepared with the information. Also, again, this is information to share with your patients because we don't just take care of dental decay and periodontal disease. And I'm going to talk a little bit about periodontal disease towards the end of the presentation. We take care of the whole person. So for instance, I had a patient today who had not been seen in our program, in the medical component of our program, for 2 years. And so we did our dental visit. There was no emergency, did an exam. And literally, we hand walk them into our education program to make sure they get back on their antiretrovirals that will keep them out of the hospital and keep them healthy. So the goal is medical dental integration. We're all getting more aware of that, and steps that we can take to make sure that our patients stay healthy, our staff stay healthy, and of course, our loved ones stay healthy. So when we talk about moderately or severely immunocompromised patients, what are we talking about? We're talking about people who are considered to be moderately or severely immunocompromised or have a weakened immune system due to several types of conditions and treatments. So some of the examples and the more common examples that are out there are receiving active oncology care or cancer treatment for tumors or cancers of the blood, have received an organ transplant and are taking medicines to suppress the immune system, received CAR T-cell therapy, which is a treatment to help your immune system attach to and kill cancer cells, which is a very cool kind of advance in medicine too that I'd love to talk about someday. Or received a stem cell transplant within the last 2 years. Moderate or severe primary immunodeficiency, advanced or untreated HIV infection. So if you have someone who has undetectable viral load, but they still have a relatively low CD4 count, they're recommended to get a booster. Active treatment with high-dose corticosteroids or any other drug that may suppress the immune response. So most of these are common sense, most of these you're aware of, but just in case, I thought I'd include the slide. If you are moderately or severely immunocompromised, you're at risk for severe COVID-19 illness and death. Additionally, your immune response to the vaccination may not be as strong as it in healthy younger people. That's why you don't see as many younger people in hospitalized, because they're healthier than people who are approaching my age or at my age. As vaccines for other diseases, you are best protected when you stay up to date with your COVID-19 vaccines. So we have talked about this. The updated vaccines, these bivalent vaccines, actually target the ones that have been causing the problem, this branch that has been more than just a branch, and the original SARS-CoV-2 virus. People 18 years and older may get a different product for the booster than they got for the primary series, as long as it's Pfizer, BioNTech, or Moderna. So if your first two, your original, were Pfizer, you can get Pfizer or you can get Moderna if you meet the age requirements. If your original vaccination was Moderna, you got 2 shots of Moderna, then you can get Moderna's vaccine for a booster, they're bivalent, or Pfizer. So it doesn't matter, mix and match is fine here. But when you're getting your original vaccines, if you are using mRNA, stay with the same brand. So if your first inoculation was with Pfizer, your second should be with Pfizer, same for Moderna. Teens age 12 to 17 may get a different product for booster than they got for their primary series, as long as it's Pfizer-BioNTech, because remember, it is the only one of the two that's approved for this age group. Children aged 5 to 11 who got a Pfizer-BioNTech primary series must also get the Pfizer-BioNTech for a booster. So they want them to stay on the same booster. People ages 12 and older may only get the updated mRNA booster at this point in time. And so I think that's why I wanted to include the information on some of the falsehoods about these mRNA vaccines. They're not going to put anything in your brain. They're not infecting DNA. They don't have any byproducts that one would be allergic to that are sometimes in our normal flu vaccine. But you can no longer get the original monovalent mRNA boosters. At the present time, even though they have submitted their data to the FDA, Novavax is not authorized for use at a booster dose. Hopefully by the next month, that will be available as well. Right now is for primary series for those who do have issue with getting the mRNA vaccines. So for the large group of people, about 30% of our population who are not vaccinated, there is an option that is not mRNA. So, U.S. plans to shift to an annual COVID shots as a new booster rolls out. And I'm hesitant about that. I normally don't try to put a lot of opinion into this. At least I do my best to not put a lot of opinion into this. I do have a little bit of an opinion here, but let's see what people are saying. The U.S. health authorities plan to recommend that people get COVID-19 boosters once a year, starting with the new bivalent boosters that are now rolling out, a shift from the current practice of issuing new advice every several months. So this is something that's different. They're basically saying at this point, if you get this booster, you're going to be good for a year. The annual cadence will be similar to that of the flu shot. The White House official announced on Tuesday, though elderly people and those with weakened immune systems may need more frequent inoculations. So there is a catch out there for that. So what about the flu shot? Can you get the flu shot and COVID-19 booster at the same time on the same day? And the answer is yes. One of a very famous immunologist from Texas who was on TV last night, Dr. Hotez, basically said he got both at the same time. And there's no reason not to do this. The only thing that is a bit different is flu tends to be worse in December and January. And we are expecting there to be a very significant flu season this year. Primarily, not only is the flu worse, but people aren't masking up like they used to when they're out in public. We're sort of mask-free in grocery stores and restaurants and theaters and Broadway shows, although one Broadway show has actually closed for a period of time because so many of the members of the cast actually ended up with COVID. So the issue is if you're getting ready to get your booster, and I will get my booster as soon as possible, I'm going to wait a little bit to get the flu vaccine. And the reason for waiting is not that I'm worried about the two vaccines interacting. I want to make sure that I have the strongest protection from the flu that I can have in December and January, which means sometime in November will be when I will get my flu vaccine. That's when I plan on getting my flu vaccine. So I'm protected, and it'll be early in November, so I'm protected through the Thanksgiving holiday. I'm protected during the Christmas holidays and Hanukkah holidays and all the different holidays that we celebrate, no matter what your religious or non-religious preferences are. And so I'm going to do it that way. A shift to annual COVID-19 boosters would be a departure from the current practice and comes after many people in the U.S. have ignored calls to get a first or second booster, partly due to fatigue with repeated inoculations or fear or for whatever the reason. We have about 70% of the general population that has received the primary series, but then it truly drops off. And if you watch these webinars over the past few months, you know the United States has not done a great job with our boosting. So this might be the strategy that they're talking about, but remember the vaccines wane over a period of time. And The mRNA vaccines do wane over a period of time, so we'll have to watch and see what happens. This is a very fluid disease. We could have a new variant that pops up. We could have a new subvariant that pops up. So I plan on getting, as soon as it's available in my part of the country, I plan on getting the bivalent booster. And I plan on waiting a little bit to get my flu shot. But if you want to get them both at the same time, there is no contraindication. So if you're somebody who's doing a lot of travel right now, my recommendation and Peter Hotez's recommendation is to get both shots now. They're both available now. If you're someone who has limited travel, maybe works from home still, or then you could get your booster now and then wait a little bit on the flu shot. So this is basically the information that is out there. Barring any new variant curveball, which is always possible, the White House coronavirus coordinator, Dr. Jha, said for a large majority of Americans, and I agree with this, for a majority of Americans, we're moving to a point where a single annual COVID shot could provide a high level of protection for an entire year. But watch what happens and see if we get waning. The steady stream of recommendations to different groups may have confused some people, which is why we're here to help straighten out that information for our patients. I mean, that's what we're really trying to do. A third of all eligible people ages 50 years and older have gotten a second COVID-19 booster. So only 33% are completely up to date before the bivalent booster came down. Roughly half of those who got the original 2 shots got a first booster, compared to 70% of Americans who have gotten the initial 2 doses. So we have a large group of people that have not been getting boosters. So this booster will provide protection for what is making people sick today, even though it's a milder disease. But as I talked about earlier on, the number of deaths is still significant. Losing close to 400 people a day is not acceptable. We need to do something about that. The new updated vaccines should keep people out of the hospital in coming months if COVID-19 virus continues to evolve in expected ways from the Omicron subvariant BA.5 that now predominates across the U.S. However, as I'm watching, that number is beginning to drop a little bit. Forecasts predict that 100,000 hospitalizations could be avoided if Americans get COVID-19 boosters at the same rate they get the flu shots this fall. Not necessarily the same day, but at the same rate that we get our vaccines. At my hospital, unless you have a medical reason, and a really good one, you need to get your flu shot and your booster to be up to date. Questions from Maine. So this is someone that I have some of his information on the second or the bottom part of the screen. I've used Dr. Topal's information in the past. I don't see any evidence, and these are his words, not mine. I don't see any evidence for how an annual COVID shot will provide durable protection without better vaccines such as variant-proof or improved nanoparticles and nasal. And we'll talk a little about the nasal vaccines. So we know that our current vaccines wane after 4 to 6 months. So Dr. Topal's concern is sort of similar to mine, is that will these vaccines actually hold up for a year? And I guess time will tell, and we'll be monitoring it just like we've been monitoring all along. Scientists urge the Biden administration to launch another Operation Warp Speed to develop inhaled COVID vaccines. This is one time that China has beat the United States to the punch. The U.S. developed the world's most widely used COVID-19 vaccines with brand new technology in record time, and that was due to the first Operation Warp Speed. But China just shot ahead of us in the huffing and sniffing phase of COVID-19 vaccine. I love those words. China's government approved CanSino's Biologics inhaled COVID-19 vaccine for use as a booster dose. The inhaled vaccine uses the same technology as the firm's WHO-approved viral vector vaccine. The new version is breathed through the mouth, and clinical trial data showed that it was more effective as a booster at preventing infections from Omicron and other variants than the injectable inactivated vaccine from the China's firm Sinovac. China and India have approved COVID-19 vaccines that can be given through the nose or mouth. So if once that's approved and we have this in the United States, again, my hope would be that the dental community will be involved in helping people stay up to date with their vaccines, especially if we're talking about inhaled vaccines or drops that might go through the mouth. India's new vaccine, developed by Bharat Biotech, is given as drops in the nose. Approved by regulators this week, the vaccine is intended to be a 2-dose primary series rather than a booster. So China is using their inhaled as a booster. The vaccine developed in India is as the initial vaccine. The nasal spray could be an option for people who haven't yet been vaccinated, according to the Associated Press, though the company is hoping that the vaccine will be approved to be used as a booster as well. So as you can see, things are moving away from shots. We do have a lot of needle-phobic people as dental providers. We know there are a lot of needle-phobic people out there. And if we can get here, there are other advantages to having mucosal vaccines that we'll talk about. The approvals validate the need for mucosal vaccines. That's the direction we need to go globally, and the United States needs to catch up. And so they are developing their own nasal COVID-19 vaccines. So I agree. I think we really need to put a lot of time, effort, and if there's available money, into the development of these mucosal vaccines. I think you'll see a higher uptake. So how do these work, and how could they change the pandemic? In theory, these vaccines could prime immune cells in the thin mucous membranes that line the cavities in the nose and mouth, where SARS-CoV-2 enters the body, and quickly stop the virus in its tracks before it spreads. So we're inhaling it, or it comes through our mouth breathers. If you can stop the infection, you've really done a great job. Right now, our vaccines prevent serious illness and hospitalization. Vaccine developers hope that mucosal vaccines will prevent even mild cases of illness and block transmission to other people, achieving what is known as sterilizing immunity. And I should have bolded that because our real goal is to get sterilizing immunity, not just prevent hospitalizations and severe illness, but prevent you from getting infected in the first place. A few mucosal vaccines have already been approved for other diseases, including a sprayable vaccine against influenza or the common flu. Evidence in animals supports the idea that sterilizing immunity can be induced against COVID-19, although we don't have a great deal of human data. Then again, we don't have a great deal of human data on the bivalent vaccine that we're using today. The COVID-19 vaccines currently used do a good job in reducing the severity of disease, as I've mentioned, but they do not block mild illness or transmission. One reason is that they are injected into muscle. Intramuscular shots prompt an immune response from T cells, which my patients have a smaller amount of, which destroy infected cells, and from B cells, which produce antibodies that neutralize pathogens, binding them to stop entering healthy cells. These cells and antibodies circulate through the bloodstream, but they aren't present at high enough levels in the nose and lungs to provide rapid protection. And the time it takes for them to get to the journey there from the bloodstream, the virus spreads and the infected person gets ill. So the whole goal is, can we stop it through mucosal vaccines from getting infected in the first place? Mucosal vaccines can prompt a whole body immune response, but they also can activate immune cells in the mucosal tissue of the nose and respiratory tract. These localized cells can act as sentinels at the site of infection. From this person from Yale University School of Medicine in New Haven, Connecticut, they can act much more quickly. Researchers are testing mucosal vaccine as a first dose for unvaccinated people and as boosters for those who've already received the COVID-19 shots. Some mucosal vaccines are identical to the injected vaccine, but are squirted as a liquid or droplets up the nose. Others are a different composition, and so they're prepared different. For instance, mucosal vaccine developed by CanSino that I mentioned early is the same as its injected one, but it's packaged into aerosols and inhaled through the mouth with a nebulizer at 1/5 the dose of the injected version. Again, that is somewhat helpful, and that was published in Nature on September 13. Can mucosal COVID-19 vaccines induce sterilizing immunity? That's a great question and a very significant question. Preventing infection and transmission is a high bar for any vaccine, but studies of SARS-CoV-2 mucosal vaccine in animals suggest that it is possible. For example, a study by mice by Goldman Istrolo and his colleagues at Yale found that intranasal boosters given after one dose of a conventional vaccine induced mucosal immunity and completely protected the animals from a lethal level of exposure to the coronavirus, whereas the intramuscular booster did not. So I think it's important. We have more work to do. There's more science to do. I'm a proponent at doing this research to move it forward, but presently we only have the mRNA boosters, and believe me, when it's available, I am going to get it because I work with a highly vulnerable population. I am going to be doing some travel this month, and so I'm going to take the steps to protect myself and the rest of my family. When you're looking at recent macaques, where a lot of research is being done on vaccines, another intranasal vaccine, which is used in an influenza-like virus to deliver SARS-CoV-2 RNA to cells, completely protected the animals from SARS-CoV-2 infection. Viral replication was undetectable in these monkeys' airways and lungs. And so this is really important. It comes out of the National Institute for Allergies and Infectious Disease, and this woman who led the study. Sorry for that. In preclinical models, we get something that's very close to sterilizing immunity. We have to see how it does in our real human population. So what about the relationship between periodontitis and COVID-19? We are dentists, we really should know this, and so I thought I'd add a couple slides just to go over this for you. There was a review that critically summarizes the nature of the clinical relationship between the most common inflammatory disease of the oral cavity, gingivitis and periodontitis, and the worst global health challenge in the present day, which is COVID-19. A periodontitis may lead to bacteremia, bacterial aspiration, and elevated levels of inflammatory biomarkers, and induce autoimmune damage, potentially an increased susceptibility to SARS-CoV-2 infection, and severe COVID-19 in patients with periodontitis. So this was a study that was first published in June, and I've got the information there for you. The meta-epidemiological evidence gathered in this study showed a non-statistically significant tendency for higher susceptibility to SARS-CoV-2 infections in patients with periodontitis. The meta-analysis strongly indicated that patients with periodontitis who have COVID have a 4-fold, 6-fold, and 7-fold increase in hospitalization, assisted ventilation, and death, respectively. So it's not going to cause you more likely, if you have periodontal disease, to get the infection. We don't have sterilizing immunity, but it is more likely, 4 times more likely that you'll be hospitalized, 6 times more likely you might need assisted ventilation, and 7-fold more likely that you could have death, respectively. A review in this work has shown, though, enough evidence to demonstrate that several oral niches, such as the buccal mucosa, gingival crevicular fluid, saliva, and dental plaque biofilm, can harbor SARS-CoV-2 virus, particularly in the severely affected population. So there is a link. We know that the mouth is connected to the rest of the body. This is showing that we need to get our patients oral healthy because you cannot be healthy without oral health. So once again, thank you for joining us. Last month we covered a little bit about monkeypox. The good news is that the number of cases in the United States is decreasing. There is a vaccine for that as well for those who are susceptible, and there is treatment that is out there that also is available, although a little difficult to access. So if you have topics that you'd like us to talk about in the next webinar, please let us know. If you have questions, please send them in. I'll be online when this is available, so if you have questions at that time, I'm always happy to answer. And with that, I'd like to turn it back to Dr. Severance. And again, thank you for your time and attention, and it's a privilege to be able to share this information with you. See you in October.
Thank you, Dr. Reznik, for the continual updates, and thank you for watching. Please email us with any questions, concerns, or ideas for future topics at webinars@henryschein.com. And please subscribe to our YouTube page by clicking the subscribe button below, and click the bell icon to be notified of any premieres. With that, thank you very much for attending, and please stay safe and stay informed.